Hey there, Scoobies. Steering away from my usual character-based analysis, I wanted to look at one of the more cringy tropes in the vampire fiction, that of romance. Specifically, the problematic trope of the interspecies romance between the immortal man, usually upward of 100 years in lifespan, and what usually ends up being a teenage girl. In this regard, Buffy falls into the same trappings as many of the other movies, books and shows within the genre. Here's a few stats for you if you don't know what I mean. So why do we keep seeing this? Well, there's the obvious commercial reasons. Youth and beauty sells.
Did you ever think that maybe there's more to life than being really, really, really ridiculously good looking?
In most of these cases, the vampire was turned at a young age, so he has the physical traits of a teen boy or young man, usually with a square jaw and chiseled good looks. From a purely aesthetic position, it would make sense to couple them with someone that looks physically in their range, and with similar good genetics. This also has the benefit of reaching the widest demographic. Despite the reasoning, you can't help but think it's somewhat creepy. As the older we get, the more we develop, both in wisdom and emotional maturity.
No such thing, bad student, only bad teacher. Teacher say, student do.
Oh great, that solves everything for me. I'll just go down to the school and straighten it out with the teacher, no problem.
Now use head for something other than target.
You'd think that a vampire of 100 plus years would find teenagers to be obnoxious and tiresome. I know I do. Vampires in movie and literature have often been tied to sex and sexuality. The manner in which they kill is intimate and involves the seduction of their victim. It's no secret in thinking that part of the allure comes in the carnal desire that comes with youth and beauty. This returns me to the notion that there is something inherently creepy with the vampires in this case, usually returning to a high school setting. For the purpose of this analysis, I'm going to take a look at 3 prominent teen vampire stories. This book turned movie franchise needs no introduction.
Alright, let's do this one last time.
But in brief, it revolves around Bella Swan, who moves to small town Hickville, where she lives with her dad and meets the cool, elusive, looks like he's about to vomit at any moment, Edward Cullen. Upon first meeting, we see Edward hide his face and, most likely, his fangs. It's clear that there's an attraction and that this has had an effect on his carnivorous desires. The movie is playing their interaction as a love-at-first-sight attraction, especially on his part. It is hinted that Ed is very well versed in the curriculum at the school, almost like he's done it before.
It's pro-face.
It's a shame the movie waits a whole scene to show off his vampire strength, and so revealing himself to her. Referring back to the concept that Ed is 108 years old, his demeanour shifts between that of his age,
radioactive spiders, and kryptonite.
It's all superhero stuff, right? What if I'm not the hero? What if I'm the bad guy?
and that of his outward persona.
Just put your seatbelt on.
You should put your seatbelt on.
The main issue I take with this series, aside from the obvious, is the same that I have with the next one I'm going to talk about. The Twilight Saga doesn't introduce any vampire lore that indicates Ed or his family work on an emotional or intellectual level that is different from any other human that surrounds them. With this in mind, Ed's maturity should reflect his years. At certain points, his self-pity at what he is, the bad guy, reflects as an introspection that confirms this. But his pursuit of Bella reeks of teen immaturity. Part of the issue is that both Esme and Carlisle are portrayed and act in a more adult manner than their kids. This creates a strange disparity when looking at the relative ages, all being senior to those around them. And of course, here I am questioning the vampires in the series while giving the wolves a free pass.
You imprinted on my daughter?
It wasn't my choice.
She's a baby!
It's not like that.
This leads me to The Vampire Diaries and Stefan and Damon Salvatore. Again, this needs no introduction, but I'm going to give one anyway.
Alright people, let's do this one last time.
The story starts with Elena Gilbert, as she is returning to high school after the unfortunate death of her parents. Like many teen dramas, she meets the cool, elusive, giant forehead of Stefan Salvatore. Like Twilight, the vampires in TVD undertake the physical transition, but mentally remain the same. With this in mind, there is an extra element of power abuse considering Elena's vulnerability at this moment in her life. Unlike Twilight, that establishes a pattern of movement due to the lack of aging, meaning that starting a new high school means they can stay in a place for twice as long, Stefan has no reason to hang out at a high school, as it's established that the vampires of TVD can pass as completely human. Stefan and Damon's creepy obsession with Elena is explained by her uncanny resemblance to the more age-appropriate Catherine, that they were both once infatuated with. This does, however, create another issue of the boys projecting their desires for Catherine on Elena, who is a very different person. I don't believe that this casts the boys in a very good light, as they both show deep obsession before getting to know Elena, when the only trait that she shares with Catherine is their looks.
She took my breath away. Elena. She's a dead ringer for Catherine.
I feel that despite trying to portray Stefan as stoic and mature, his pursuit is based on something much more shallow. Of course, this immaturity, despite his many years, contradicts my larger point, but that wasn't the show's intention.
Alright people, let's start at the beginning one last time.
In the Buffy lore, I believe that there is more in play, considering the layers and themes. Returning to the allegory that the vampire is a representation for the hurdles of teens when facing growing up, it stands to reason that vampires themselves are stuck. They remain in a state of arrested development, forever, never changing.
Things change.
Not us! Not demons!
I think the argument can be made that this can be linked to the lack of a soul.
Ask me again why I could never love you.
Taking Spike as an example, he is smart and ruthless, but he tends to work on impulse. He is a slave to his desires.
I was rash, and if I had to do it all over again, who am I kidding? I would do it exactly the same.
The soul, acting as a conscience in the series, leads us to believe that vampires don't care about their victims, and on the most part this is true. But in the case of Spike, it also leads me to believe that, like the Lost Boys, he is still a child. He never really developed a clear sight of right and wrong. In the scene, he is once again acting on impulse. He is craving to satisfy his desires, and he acts with naivety. He's confused by Buffy's reaction. Why wouldn't he be? His understanding of love comes from his relationship with Drusilla. Being a vampire herself, the relationship was propelled by their selfish desires. This meant that they were matched in their lack of understanding to the wants and needs of others. With that as his education, and previous events, how could he understand the difference?
I'm in love with you.
You're in love with pain. Admit it. You like me because you enjoy getting beat down.
You afraid I'm gonna...
Of course, my thoughts on this is predicated on the notion that Spike is unable to control such urges due to his nature. He can't grow up. So being all id, he is driven by the strongest desires and will not be denied. But she is out of reach, evolving, maturing, while he's doomed to remain the same. This brings me to Angel. Based on my earlier assertions, it's clear that Angelus, like Spike, acts completely on impulse. Obtaining a soul makes Angel unique. He has a conscience. He can clearly define right from wrong. He understands the consequences of his actions, and eventually fights for the needs of others. In short, he is capable of the same kind of growth as Buffy herself. To me, this is what makes his relationship with Buffy, outside of the popcorn romance that it's portrayed as problematic. Unlike Spike, Angel's soul was returned to him in 1898. If we take this at the point that he was able to think and feel rationally again, able to grow emotionally, then the age gap between him and Buffy drops significantly. It goes from 254 to 99 years. And I've based this on season 1, so forgive me if the maths isn't quite right. So that's a vast improvement, right? In my view, it makes Angel more of a predator than Spike or Angelus. He knows better. He has had a century to grow and mature, and continues to do so while other vampires are stuck. His decision to leave Sunnydale becomes his redeeming quality, and evidences a level of maturity and logical reasoning that he didn't contain during the early seasons, separating himself from his more base urges. So what do you think of age gaps between humans and vampires? Is it gross? Do you just get caught up in the romance and let it all slide? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, take it easy.